Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host. Today, we're talking about Into the Wild, the 2007 biopic starring Emile Hirsch. It's the story of Christopher McCandless, who in 1990, after graduating college, went off the grid and hiked across the country, eventually making his way to Alaska. The movie is based on the book by Jon Krakauer, adapted and directed by Sean Penn. At Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter score is 83%, and the critics' consensus reads, with his sturdy cast and confident direction, Sean Penn has turned a complex work of nonfiction like Into the Wild into an accessible and poignant character study. Today's conversation might contain spoilers, so if you want to watch the film before listening, check your streaming services. I was recently able to find it on Netflix. My guest today is Derek Hill, the production designer for the film. Derek, welcome to Below the Line.
Oh, thank you very much for having me.
So, Derek, it looks like from IMDb that your first credits in the art department date back to 1980, and that you're still working today. Tell us a little bit about your career and where Into the Wild fits into the larger picture.
I started, I think I started at the bottom in the industry from the craft service I said, well, okay, well, that was one show. And I said, I didn't need to do that anymore. And then I think I worked in the electric department and carried the heavy cable. And I said, I don't think I can prolong my life in that role, and worked as a grip, and then started in the art department and props and did a little bit of that. Then the set dressing and the on-set dresser and the lead man, and then eventually moving to set decorator on a number of huge films. And I met some great people along the way. And that was one of the first times that I met Sean Penn, was when I was the decorator on Indian Runner. I think that was in the mid 80s. And he and I have been friends ever since. I've worked on about 4 or 5 projects with him. And then I moved up to art director, and then eventually on to production designer. It was like I was being pushed from the bottom and drawn from the top as well.
And so were many of those films in this? So your first film, you said, was it Indian Runner with Sean Penn?
Correct.
And then those films in between, or where is Into the Wild of that group of films you did with Sean Penn?
Into the Wild was the last film that I've done with Sean. It's not the last time that he's called me. It's just that my schedule, I have a pretty good nucleus of directors and people that I've worked with in the past. And, people call like, when are you next available? And so, I'll try to line it up or try to be available. I know that when I did Into the Wild, I'd done the Crossing Guard with Sean. We shot it in LA in like 93, 94. And then 10 years later, I'm working on House at the same, and I get a call from Sean and says, hey, look, I finally got the rights to the book. Let's do the movie. And of course, 10 years had gone by, and it's like, okay, what book? What movie? And so he said, no, I got the Jon Krakauer book, Into the Wild. I said, oh, okay. Maybe I should get it and read it so I can know what it is. And he said, sure, no, that's great. We'll sit and talk about it. I've been working on it, been writing it, and finally got the approval from the family to do the show. And I've got Emile Hirsch lined up, and then I'm working on the funding. And then I'm up in Marin County, and once I get it together, I'll come down and meet with you. I said, okay, well, that's great. That's fantastic. I'm working on the TV series House, and we'll see when it plays out. And so, okay. And then, like, I think 8 hours later, he called and said, hey, look, I got the money, and I'm on my way down to meet with you.
That's a lot faster than a lot of the turnaround when people are trying to get money.
Yeah. So he said, why don't we meet for dinner tomorrow? I think tomorrow night I'll be in, and we'll have dinner with Emile Hirsch. And I go, oh, okay. Well, then I IMDb look up Emile Hirsch and try to figure out who he is and try to figure out the connection. And now I've got to really read the book as quick as I can. So then we met that evening at a restaurant in LA, and it was a great chat. And It's going to be a real story about family, about coming of age, about finding your way in this life today. And even as you look back today, it's current problems of today existed back in those days, existed in Christopher McCandless's day. And you think about looking back now, I can think about the importance of the film, what it meant, because sometimes when you're doing the films, you're not always you're not totally engaged in the feeling of it in that sense, because you're worried about, did I find the right location? Did I make the set look right? Did I get it right? And that kind of stuff. But now looking back, and the fact that just not too far long ago, they removed the bus from the Alaskan wilderness because of so many people had gone there and gotten lost, and the danger factor and the rescue factor. They just removed the bus for safety.
And so I had read that they moved the bus, but didn't check the year. That was after the film came out. You think the film encouraged people to start going and checking out the area?
And the thing of it is it was really meaningful to Sean. And so, he basically said, look, I've got some family photos that they gave me. I've been doing some research. I've been down to Slab City. I've been down to these other places. I've driven there. It's really great. You got to get engaged in this. So I said, that's great. I'll do that. And so, and he said, this is going to be different from any film you've ever worked on. It's going to be a passion project of us. We're all in this together. We're going to travel together. We're going to spend time together. And then we're just going to make this one great, wonderful movie. And then we're going to shoot, and then we're going to wait the passage of time. He's going to gain weight. He's going to lose weight. He's going to grow his hair, grow his beard. And so it was really a strange deal, because I was basically on for probably 11 months of the time, even though I was doing another project at the same time. I go, okay, I'm going to work it in. And the season ended on House, and I said, well, I'm done. I'm doing Sean Penn's movie. And they go, no, that's okay. You can still come back and help develop our show and concept meetings and figure that out and do what you're doing. I said, okay. So I traveled around, and I went to Georgia and looked at where, he went to school. And then, I went to New Mexico, and I went down to Mexico, and I went to Arizona, and I went to Nebraska, and then I went to South Dakota, and then we went to Alaska. We went to Alaska with the assistant director, David Webb, the director of photography, Eric Gauthier, and John Kelly, the producer. And we took snowmobiles 28 miles in to go to the real bus. We had to see the real bus, figure out what we're going to do, how we're going to create the bus and stuff. And, it was 28 miles in, 0 degrees, snowmobiles. That probably might have been the first time I'd been on a snowmobile for any great length of time. Okay. And so we're just cruising, and, we had a guide that took us there and led us there. We went across frozen rivers and through the mountains and through the hills and the trees and the path. The Stampede Trail leads you a lot of the way there. But when you get to the river there, then it's a whole different scenario. So we got to the bus, and then Sean said, well, I really need some time by myself in the bus. We said, that's great. Go ahead. And he's probably spent about 30 minutes in there.
Like 30 minutes, not like a week. He didn't need a week by himself in the bus, or
right. Well, it was cold, and he knew that we were there. And then what happened is he'd had provisions from the family that were stuffed in his clothes, notebook, paper, things like that to leave in the bus that Chris always took with him, so that when people do get to the bus, they have something to survive on, to live on, to write their mission. What we did find is the diary of Christopher McCandless, which we displayed in the film, where he kept track of every day what he did. And, it was an amazing journey. It was a life-changing journey. it was a meaningful journey looking back, and you think, wow, this kid was amazing. You know, he was running away from his life, and his father had a second family that was not really well publicized and known, and so he just rejected everything in life and just I'm going out on my own. I think one of the lines that I always think back when we did what was Vince Vaughn playing the ranch hand, you know, where they did the wheat foresting. He goes, "It's great. You're going to Alaska. Well, what are you going to do when you get to Alaska?" "I'm just going to Alaska. I'm going to be in Alaska. I've just everything." And it's like you go there, and I'd never been to Alaska. And I think on that film, I probably took 15,000 photos just from my journey, seeing places that I'd never seen, going down roads in Alaska, and you just go, wow, look at that. Oh, look at the sun on those mountains. And you just jump out and you take a photograph, and then you look back the other way, and there's a reflection. There's a moose going across the wilderness, the tundra. I mean, it was like just life-changing. It was almost that at times I wished I would have spent more time thinking about my journey in Alaska than the journey that I was hired to do.
A passion project for Sean Penn. Obviously, he'd been carrying the idea for a while, bringing these folks together and working in that way. I want to take a little aside, though, and talk about your relationship as the production designer with locations, because this movie is heavy on locations. You said the spaces in Alaska, but also across the country, following Christopher's journey. What was your relationship with locations on this film, and was it different or the same as it is on a typical film or a typical project?
No, I think that I engaged a gal that I'd worked with when I met her on The Postman in 1997. She was from Arizona, Nancy Haker. And she and I have worked several times before we got to working with Sean Penn, that she really engages in the story and the thought process a little the same way a production designer does. And, I had location scouts in California. I had them in Georgia. I had them in Alaska. And so, and then in Oregon, we shot in Oregon as well, and Washington. So I had I would say probably a dozen different location people along the journey. I had probably two key people for the whole show that were like relating to them, because it was it wasn't like we were going to places where there was a big infrastructure, like the detrital wash in Arizona. We had to it was like, okay, we had to photograph, and I'm just driving in Arizona, and I'm going, here comes a wash. And then you go, well, he would have gotten off the trail. And then, in the movie, we had his car that was up the dry creek bed until the rains came. And then it wasn't dry anymore. And that was like a journey that you try to figure out how we can achieve that and still create the same life that we did. And at the same time, you're trying to figure out how can we afford to go to some of the places, not that they were expensive, but that was like the journey. And I think that because it was Sean and his strength in doing the right thing, that most production companies wouldn't let us go to Carthage, South Dakota, 180 people, with no infrastructure. So we traveled in a smaller than normal crew. Many times it was say a prop man and Emil and Eric, the DP, the AD, and Sean, and we would just drive, and we would find these great places in Alaska, and we'd say, jump out, look at the mountain in the background, the sun's perfect, jump here, get on top of the car, this is going to be a great pan around shot, or I remember one day we stopped along the side of the road, and there was a floating ice thing down the creek. Next thing I know, Sean's got the camera and he's riding it down the creek, and I'm just going, okay, all right. So those were the things that Once we kind of found the journey, I had another production supervisor, Haley Sweet, that was with me at times. So if I didn't take a location person, she was with me, and then I would say, "Go and walk down that road right there. I'm going to take a long lens and I'll just videotape you, and I think that's the shot." And then I would go back and put all these things and present them to Sean and put it on a map, and we would say, okay, the next leg of the time, we need this in the summer or the spring or the fall, then we'll make this and we'll go shoot in those locations. So we went to Alaska like 4 different times. When we went there, the first time we found the bus, and then Sean goes, "We're not going to shoot in this bus." I go, "Okay."
Because so a little context for folks. When he goes to Alaska, crosses a river, spends a lot of time in this bus that he found as shelter, a bus that had been abandoned for a very long time. But you went to the actual bus, as we discussed earlier, but you're not filming in the actual bus. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Basically, we found a couple of buses, and we cut and pieced them together to create the one bus that we were going to duplicate for the hero bus. But then we need to find out where we could put the bus. So another snowmobile trip down the riverbanks, trying to find the spot, and basically the story point was the bus was located not very far from, I believe, the Technolika River. I could be wrong on the exact pronunciation of the river, but it was up on a hillside, and then it dropped down to the river. We pulled up to this spot, and there was a bank up there, and Sean jumped up off his snowmobile, and he runs up, and it's like 3 feet deep of snow. And they go, "We're coming, we're coming." And Sean's up at the top, and he gets up there, and there's 2 moose right at the top of the mountain where it's flat plateau. And he goes, "This is it. Chris sent the moose as a message. This is where the bus is going to be." So then I go, "Okay, that's great. We'll figure out how to get it." And then it's like, I need it exactly in this spot, So I said, okay, well, I put 2 stakes in the ground up there, so many feet from the riverbank where it drops down. And then we start building the bus. And then we got to get the bus there. How are we going to get the bus there? So then we take the highway guardrails and we turn them flat, and we make them like sleds. Okay. So then we get a helicopter, and we put the helicopter, we pick up the bus, put it on the sled, and then we got a bulldozer to pull the bus in after we get it across the river. Okay. But it's frozen, so it's no problem at this point. So we dragged the bus in, and then it was a battle to get it exactly where Sean wanted it. But I know Sean's a very specific on his filmmaking. So I said, no, it can't be at this angle. It has to be this, like this. So we get it in place. Everything's working great. We take a helicopter ride to figure out exactly where this is. And Sean and I go and travel and go, okay, that's it. I'll figure it out from here. We set it up. We come up and shoot, kind of a little bit of reverse. We go, his first arrival into Alaska. We find the road where we find the real guy that gave him the jacket and stuff. So it's like, I can't believe we found the real guy. But when you go up there, there's not many people. Okay,
so the people who know him are still around.
And then the way that Sean liked it was as real as possible, even if they weren't a real actor. This is the guy I want to use. We're going to use this guy. I said, that's fine. Well, it's great. We'll make this work, and it'll all be good. And it did. He's in the film, and so then we go shoot some other part of the film, and then we come back, and it's like the springtime. And then we go, okay, we can still get in, still kind of frozen over. We come back the third time, and it's the summer. Now the river's thawed, flowing. We can't get across the river to get to the bus. Just like he couldn't get across the river to get out. So he was stuck there.
Now you guys are blocked from your set.
Now I have to build a bridge. Okay, cross the river, so we could get to the set and everybody could get there, because it was still a drive from where we were to the set. So from where we stayed there, and we shot summer, then we shot this fall again.
I want to talk more about the actual filming you did there, but I think it's a very interesting marriage between what is really a guerrilla style almost approach to the actual filming, small groups and very intimate and a lot of handheld, I believe, but the logistical infrastructure required to create this space was huge and certainly on a different scale than what you're describing as the actual filming. And that's an interesting meetup of that, particularly if you say there's issues with budget or concerns about that. How did that feel to you overall, how it came together?
Well, I look back on when we did it. There's a couple of things that always stick into my mind because we work on different shows along the way, and everybody goes, "Well, we're limited on budget, and we're doing this, and we're all in this together." You know how that line you hear a lot, and I'm going, now, be careful because I know what we're all in this together because I did a film with this guy who's famous. He's an actor, but he's also a director. And he said, we're all in this film together. And that meant we stayed in the Motor 8 Inn on this highway. We drove cars. He took his turn driving. We flew Southwest Airlines. He rode in the same seats with us. We're just going to stop in the chicken place and grab some chicken for our meal. And then, so a lot of that, and then that's really a passionate filmmaker in the sense that we're all in together. I hear that a lot. And then, you're at places and you go, well, I have no problem flying economy, but everybody else is still flying above me, is flying in first class or whatever. That's not in this together. Somewhere we lost that. And I'm a team player when we're all on the same team. And the relationships that you grow with on something like that are really amazing because we're all sacrificing in the sense. I had a art director / construction coordinator with 2 guys and a painter, and that's what I did the show with. And then I had a decorator and then a small swing gang because around the bus we're painting, and we planted the tree and put the bucket at the top for him to shower, and that was kind of, and then created the stuff inside the van, and of course the whole show as you go along. But those are the main sets. We go down into the Colorado River and the Grand Canyon. I think there were my location person, producer, Sean, the DP, the AD, me, and water safety guy, and a river guide. And we probably went in there 130 miles of the river. We started from the top and floated down. This will be a good spot. There's some great caves that you can crawl up into, which, all those places that we did that. Emil did it in the show. Cliffs that you could jump off of. And I can't remember in the movie if he jumped off of, a water bank cliff.
There's a lot of the water stuff, right? He jumps off the cliff. There's the camp where he meets the Danish couple, and there's the rapids themselves. As far as finding a place where they're complaining that how dangerous it is. How did you guys film something like that, or find the right spot?
We found the spot to do it, and we figured out where we're going to do it. And it's going to be 3 days on the river, so there's no coming out. You're camping, you're living on the river. And then until you get to the spot where they pick you out. And then we had a world-class kayaker that looked really like Emil. Okay. So Emil was doing all the stuff, and of course, I think then we met the Danish couple, and we met someone like that along the way, and it was really unique. And we found a great spot to do those things where it was really down in the river. So you go, okay, this place we're gonna take over. And it's not like you can say, if someone else happened to be there, you had to kind of get it, own it, and then protect it so other campers didn't stop in there. So we did that. And then we got down to the rapids part, and we had, I think, water safety guys. We had, guys with cameras in the water and all the stuff in it. And it was like, okay, well, the professional guy goes down and all's well, look really great. And then Sean says, okay, well, Emil, now I'd like for you to try it. And he goes, well, I'm not really sure. I thought that the footage, that looks great what he did. And Sean, was like, well, that'd be great, but I really want to get you doing it. And he goes, it's not that difficult. And Emil goes, well, if it's not that difficult, why don't you just jump in it and show me? Okay. So he did, and Sean flipped over, and then he got back up there and got upstream, and then it goes like, yeah, wasn't that difficult, was it? And then Emil did it,
And he did do it at the end. Wow.
Yeah, because then he had an incentive because Sean didn't. So those were memorable moments and things that you challenge yourself to go beyond the limit on it, because everybody's on the water. Even though we're in big kayak Zodiac boats, it's still a dangerous thing in the river.
Right. Having done some water shooting myself, even calm things in the water can go sideways quickly if people aren't paying attention or there's an issue or an accident. So
yeah,
obviously you guys are well structured and no issues on this film, despite the challenges of the filming you're doing, it sounds like.
Right.
Well, talking about the locations, I want to continue on that journey. He takes the river all the way down to Mexico. And there's a very brief scene where he's going through, I don't know exactly what it is, like the water, like where, like through the dams and such. Like they're just short scenes, but again, still a lot of work to try and pull those things together.
Yeah, no, that was down just inside Mexico, because it probably was something that we couldn't do in the States, and so we knew, we tested it. We were down in the water. We knew the height of how that one gate was open enough to get him down through it, and we had cameras, I think, on both sides of that. But those were meaningful. I mean, that's the filmmaker of Sean of realism. Okay, I didn't build it. We didn't have the money to build it. We had to shoot it.
Well, and what about when he comes back with the border crossing and such, and he has some interaction with the guards? They talked about coming back into the U.S. How much of that is on location? Are you building sets for that? Are you doing any stage work on this at all?
The only stage work we did was towards the end when we did a little bit of stuff of the riding in the bus towards the end, when his weight was down and that stuff. But that was kind of like in post almost. But that real border crossing, we went down there and we crossed into the border into Mexico. We shot down in El Golfo, all real stuff. And then, we just made our connection of one of those small border crossings coming back.
That leads into a sequence where he takes the train up to Los Angeles. And so what's involved from the production design and work in this space for those train shots on the car, on the tracks, like all of that, again, short scenes, but not something you can just take for granted, I think, to capture the realism that Sean's going for in that.
Well, as we all know, trains are dangerous, and so I think this was probably before the incident in Georgia. We shot that in Parker, Arizona part, the train stuff, and then the whole thing where he jumps on the train and he gets thrown off and that stuff. We shot all that pretty much real. I think we controlled the train, in that sense, but it was all real moving train up in Parker and that side of Arizona that they were at that part. No, it's just timing and rehearsal and that stuff. But it wasn't like we had a super amount of time for rehearsal, especially the way we shot it, in as many places as we moved.
So Derek, the film is very much about these open nature spaces and what Christopher finds in them and the return for himself. There's lots and lots of the movie take place outside, but there's a very important sequence, I think, to sort of draw that contrast where you're shooting in Los Angeles, where he's basically homeless for a period of time. You're shooting at a shelter, you're shooting the streets. It's a very important counterpoint to the rest of the movie. Again, not a long sequence of the film overall, but really vital for, I think, the message of the film. Talk to me about designing for those areas.
Sean knew, we knew LA pretty good for that. So we used the exterior in LA for those scenes. And I believe the interior of the shelter was in Portland, Oregon, that we were in a real shelter. It wasn't as, back then there wasn't as many people in the shelter as there are today. So, but being on the streets of LA was very important to Sean, shooting all of those scenes down in the LA River and then along those LA streets and those back areas was all, pretty much Sean Penn the whole way in that sense. And then just making it feel like, Chris just gave up everything and just wanted to live off the land, didn't need the money, didn't believe in the money, and just wanted to live naturally.
Another area where you shot, I would say, realism and where things actually exist is where there's the trailer camp where a lot of what they call themselves, the tire rovers or the tire nomads and such, they gathered. What is the production design in something like that as far as how did you do that? Did you bring all that together? Did you go somewhere where people were?
There was a place on the other side of the Salton Sea, which I have a place out in California desert there in Palm Springs area. So I'd heard about it. I'd never seen it. It's called Slab City. And then there was a Lookout Mountain there where, the God Mountain and everything.
That's right. The Salvation Mountain, which is an actual place. Mountain. And you're filming there. Yeah. Talk to me all about all of that.
So that leads you into that Slab City. So we were driving and there's like 6 of us or 5 of us and whatever. Emil wasn't with us at the time. I don't believe the first time. And then we just stopped in there. And then we just start talking to him. And then and he's telling a story. He goes, telling about God, how he started in Nebraska and he was on a hot air balloon and the hot air balloon just put me down here. And this is where God wanted me to be. And he was just telling these stories and he had no idea who Sean Penn was. Okay. And so he'd just go and tell this story and walk us around and show us what all of his creations and what it meant to him. And we took photos and then, I went back there again before we shot. Same story. Didn't remember us, so we go there the third time to shoot. And I said, how do you want to play this? He goes, we're just going in there. Camera's low key, not announcing it. We're just going to listen to him talk. Unscripted, natural, take it all in. And that's the way we played it. And Emil just played it like, that's great. Tell me about the journey and what it means and all the stuff. And we just, it was and I've been back twice. I took the daughter and my wife there because they just wanted to see it. It's just, even though he's no longer alive, it still survives on him. It's like, how'd he come up with it? Somebody brought me a bucket of paint that was left over and I just put it in the mountain. And then I just had this hay and I just put this and I bumped car bumper and I did this and did that. And it's like, it just kept building and building. And he lived in one of the buses that was out in the front. And that intrigued Sean, because it really meant a lot for him to put him in our movie. And then right past that area is called Slab City. And this is like living off the radar. It's an old military base. Anything goes. You could see there was probably, some trailer burnouts from meth labs. One of the bad things or the good things, we were traveling in 2 black Suburbans. Of course, 2 black Suburbans pulling in a place like that, people scatter. Nobody comes out. They don't know if we're the feds. They don't know if we're DEA. They don't know who we are. And we talked about how we were going to create the scenes there because it was a little bit of territorial area. And we talked and I said, I don't think we can occupy this space here. I can create exactly what you want over here. Then we're not really encroaching on anybody's personal property. They can come see what we're doing. They can embrace what we're doing, but we'll we're another section that's starting up. And so we created that whole world and the stage and all that stuff for all of our scenes there. You know, it's if you go by yourself, it's probably could feel scary. You know, if you go, especially what time of day you're going, because you see people and you know, some people at that point might have recognized Sean, you know, but when we came back to do our filming there, it was, you know, we had security and we had everything we needed to protect us from any of the outsiders.
Now, and is this an area where you're bringing in professional background to do some of these larger, I think there's a concert scene and
Yeah,
a few other areas people walking around, or
we you know, the casting people got around and talked to people that live there to let them be a part of it, because they're really, those people there aren't really working in a sense. They're just living off the radar. So we embraced, every time we went into places, we embraced the locals as much as possible. In fact, the scene jumping off of that and up in Cape Disappointment, up on the beach where the hippies lived. Catherine, was it Catherine Keener?
that's right.
And I think it was Brian Durker, and we called him Dirk for short.
He's a great character.
So anyway, we didn't know who was going to play the role, okay, for the guy. And you know, Sean, he had, you know, he's got a great repertoire of people that he can pull in, you know. And he goes, no, I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that. You know, I saw a guy in the hardware store. Come take a look. What do you think? I go, he didn't feel right. So then he goes, we're going to use Dirk. I said, the tour guide on the river? Yeah, we're going to use him. He's going to play the role. And I said, oh, okay. He'll be doing, you know, longer hair and he could, you know, pull the role off size wise and everything. And it was so funny talking to him, because I said, hey, you know, you're going to be in the movie. I'm going to be in the movie. Yeah, no, he wants you to play the hippie lover. And then, you know, and then it was funny kidding him. I go, are you married? He goes, yeah. I said, your wife's not going to mind you making love to this girl, are you? And it's like, I'm going to have to do what? And then it was like, you know, we're getting ready to shoot the scenes. And then it was like, you know, he's Sean, Dirk's getting a little worried, nervous. And I said, go talk to him. I said, okay. Hey, listen, it's really nothing to it. You just be yourself. He goes, no, how does he want me to sound? What's he want me to be? He wants you to be Dirk. Okay.
It's you know, it's a real fascinating and I'd say seamless mix of, as you've described, non-professionals and seasoned actors who really sink into their roles no matter how small and really merge together in a tapestry that helps carry this film to be I think the vision that Sean was talking about.
You know, I think that's what made it. I mean, it's like, you know, like we were driving, okay, and we're like maybe halfway in the movie, and you know, we're driving from Page, Arizona to Las Vegas, and you know, Sean would say, hey, I put this CD in. Put the CD in. You listen to the music, and you go, what do you think? I said, yeah, it's pretty good music. Let's go to the next song. All right, we'll go to the next song. I said, I didn't know who the band was. You know, it's like, and then he goes, well, I think that's going to be we're going to get him to do the soundtrack. And I said, okay. It's Eddie Vedder. I said, oh, okay. You know, because, you know, you're not really thinking about, you know, because he's a friend of Sean's. So right. You go like, okay, well, that'll be good. And then when the film's put together, and then you hear the soundtrack, and you go, wow, the soundtrack, that's better than the movie. You know, you're listening to the stuff, and you just go, man, that's eerie how it works, and it helps make the movie as well.
You know, I want to come back to the Magic Bus, which is really very interesting. He doesn't chronologically, he doesn't spend that much time in Alaska, but the idea of Alaska is the thread through the entire film. And in the way it's edited together, He goes into Alaska early, and we go back and forth as we follow the journey to get there. I think it works really well. But there's a couple of other small scenes that I'm wondering, they caught my attention, and your perspective on how they came together. You talked about, for example, building the bridge so crew could get across the river, but there's also a smaller man-made bridge that Emil dances around on the river when he's doing some fishing and such. You had to build that obviously for picture, and I'm curious whether that was a specific challenge above and beyond these others, or that came together simply for
Let me
you.
think if this is the one in the gorge and he sees the deer.
I think so. I think from the bridge he sees some
Yeah,
wildlife there as
it
well.
was in Oregon, and
Ah,
we found a great area to do that stuff. You know, that he's hiking through this stuff, and then we brought the deer in for that stuff. But yeah, those kind of things that, Sean was more about, let's find what nature gave us rather than creating something that didn't quite look right for the film. And that was the challenge of the difference between making sure that we're safe, but then also making it look natural. And Emil was always for that. Let's take the journey through the woods and see what the woods gives us. And and it was like, we have to shoot this. You found this great gorge. It has to be at like 4 o'clock because the
right on
sun.
time.
Yeah, I mean, I think production people hate this thing, but when these directors of these DPs go, we can't shoot it, but it's such and such hour. You know that that's what we did to get some of these great looks. And I know that when we shot in Alaska, when we shot in the summer, it was like, okay, we go by and get in the car and we drive out to location. It's like 6 o'clock in the morning. It's light. Let's get the light and let's do it right. And then we get into it and it's looking great. And we're doing this stuff. And it's like, hey, okay, we're wrapped. And then we're going back to the hotel and said, well, should we grab a bite to eat and something to drink? I said, well, it's like 12:30 in the morning, still light outside. Okay. Because it's summer. And I'm going, well, let's see, 6:30 to 12, that's 18 hours. We're good. But yeah, let's stop for a drink and then we'll go on and we'll continue tomorrow. But shooting those times in Alaska gives you that magic hours, a 4-hour magic hour instead of 20 minutes. Shooting those scenes and Alaska at those right times was amazing.
Now there's scenes with the moose where he kills a moose and he cuts it up and tries to put it on the river. Did you do that in Alaska as well, or was that in this Oregon space where you did some other river work?
Alaska.
Oh wow, okay.
What we did, what we found out, because it's like you got to have a real moose, okay, and you're not going to kill a real moose. So what we did was we found out that you contact the highway department in Alaska, and they get notified that a moose has been hit or whatever, and then you can go claim the moose. Okay, so then we got the moose and then we froze him. Okay, and so then when we were ready to use him, the good news and bad news is that he was frozen, and it took longer to thaw than we anticipated. But yeah.
Again, going for the realism at every possible turn when you're working with Sean Penn. I think it's worth noting, Derek, that you and I met through a mutual friend, and I asked you what project you wanted to talk about. And this was the project that came up first, and you haven't wavered in that at all. Tell me, I think it's obvious through all the things we've talked about, but I want to speak more directly about what it was about working on this film that made it so special.
Well, I think one of the things that I try to do is I try to work across every genre that I can so that I've got a broad perspective of working in the business. And through my career, as you see, I've done many different things, and a lot of people have nowhere near the range that I have. But because of my relationship with Sean, I know Sean, I've known Sean for, 25 years or whatever. He is one of the most loyal guys that I've ever worked with, and one of the guys that's true to his word. And so when you get into the business of this and people that know you and respect you and treat you with the same respect that they expect, then it's meaningful. The fact that it was a challenge to find Chris's journey, the people that we met along the way, the Hal Holbrooks, and then, I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, those scenes that bring you to tears, that some of the stuff that they did. And then working with his family, we shot in Portland, Oregon, up there for the house and stuff. And the scenes at dinner when the family was there and he's denouncing his family and he was gone, those are very powerful scenes. And then the scene when his dad breaks down in the street, it's almost like it brings some stuff. It makes you think, did I miss something along the way? Did I take the easy journey instead of the hard journey that he took? And did I miss some learning along the way? I know that growing up, and I did these journeys with my grandparents living in Oklahoma. And so it really made me think, as Chris was a kid taking this in for the first time, it's like you talked about the shaving scene, okay? We're driving from Mount Hood back to Portland, and there's one of those crop fields, and the sprinklers are going, and Sean goes, "That's it. Let's get out. Get up. We're going to go shoot this." And then you just go, "We're going to do what?" You didn't really question it. And then it's so meaningful. He's up there shaving. He's just happy in the world, shaving in the sprinklers because he hadn't had a shower, and it's just freedom. And that is filmmaking, that it's inspirational filmmaking, that you take that moment that you're always on and you're always ready to get that shot. I mean, I look back in some of the still photos, and then I got the AD's got his clipboard, and he's blowing like fanning the wind. And Sean's got the camera, Eric's got the camera close up, and we got a beautiful shot in the background, and it looks like Emil's on a windy path, and we're on the road shooting. But that's what we did in a lot of the places, especially Alaska. Arizona was great. Finding the river was great. Down in Mexico, El Golfo, finding those spots. I look back at some of those photos and I just go, oh boy, I remember that day. I remember that day we will cross the border. Man, it was amazing. And then you see Sean, and he's seeing all these older Americans going down there to get their prescription. And he just goes, "That's shameful." Then you go, that's a real person looking at what Americans have to do to survive. It's those kind of moments that you sense. And just like him doing the COVID training and, all the testing.
That's right.
Because nobody could, he could. He could pull it together. And that's the Sean Penn that I know. That's the Sean Penn that I'll go to battle with on any project. And I jump at the opportunity when he calls me to do something, because we're all in it together. And then that he's gonna let you be a part of it.
Yeah, when you reference the COVID training, I was at a Directors Guild Zoom where Sean came and talked to us about his efforts in that space to really up the training. And when the first line folks, so they weren't tied down by the medical personnel, tied down with what's more routine, he built a whole organization around that. And again, real contributions in real time to what we're doing these days.
But that's what it's like with me working with him, and that projects that I've worked on, Indian Runner with him. He had a vision. I found a great bar in Nebraska. I found 2 great bars, and the bar was on the left-hand side. And then I said, "Come take a look. I found this great bars." And he goes, "No, it's not it. I saw it. The bar's on the right-hand side." That's the first time I worked with him. I go, "The bar's on the right-hand side. Based upon what?" You know what I mean? So then you realize that some directors look from left to right. Others look from right to left. They have their eyes wide open. They don't miss They don't, miss anything. They don't miss a great opportunity to get a great shot or a great image that will, it makes you appreciate life each day, savor the moment.
Well, the atmosphere you guys created on this film, it's very apparent in the movie itself, really comes together. We've really only scratched on I think the surface of all the work that went into it. So people, if you have seen the film before, it's worth going to watch again. If you haven't seen it, even if you listen to the podcast first, go check it out. I think everything we talked about will resonate with you. Derek, thanks so much for coming on and sharing these stories with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to share it with you and everybody else that listens.
Listeners, I hope you're enjoying the current season. Your feedback is always welcome. You can send email comments to skid, S-K-I-D, at belowtheline.biz. That's B-I-Z. Please rate us wherever you get your podcasts. It helps us reach new listeners. If you're on Facebook, you can find photos and other behind-the-scenes materials at Podcast Below the Line. And by the way, this is an episode where Derek has promised to share a lot of photos with us. Finally, you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Pod Below the Line. Thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. Thanks again for listening. Be safe out there.